Hey, what's up, folks? This is Jesse with Keeping It Real Finance, the channel that always has your back and tells it like it is. Well, today's video is going to be centered all around where the bottom is going to be for Bitcoin. So we had this question come up on our weekly JASME call last night. One of the listeners said, well, where do you think the actual bottom is going to be for Bitcoin? And so that's kind of what's inspiring this video today. So I'm going to be taking a look at the chart and the various indicators on TradingView. We'll see what those all mean. I'm going to be giving you my post from CT on kind of where I think this thing could end up. We're going to be taking a look at some other market factors of what's going on with Terra USD. So that's got some implications here in the market. We're going to be taking a look at the rainbow chart. So if you haven't heard of the rainbow chart, this is a very good thing to know about. It's basically a color-coded Bitcoin chart that kind of tells you where we're at a macro level in terms of what's going on with Bitcoin. So we're going to take a look at that as well. And then we're just sort of going to end it with looking at over time, in DCAs, what are your returns looking like with some additional tools here on blockchaincenter.net. So really kind of interesting stuff. And then I'll wrap this one up with some final thoughts. All right. So if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit the like button. If this is your first time to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And if you click the bell, you'll be made aware whenever I post time-sensitive content just like this. And now, let's get it going. All right, so good morning to everybody out there. I know the markets are down, markets are red, pretty much across the board, all this stemming from the stock market, all right? Now, we had the question come up in our weekly JASME call yesterday about where the Bitcoin bottom might be. And to that particular person that asked that question, I said, hey, I'll post up a response to that on my Twitter feed, and that's what you're looking at right here. So I posted this earlier this morning, but I want to break this down a little further than just this, all right? So starting here with my tweet, so I noted that Bitcoin is oversold on low volume. I noted the RSI has bottomed out. Market Cipher confirms bottom in a blue wave. Bitcoin money outflow is minimal. And I said, in my opinion, we drop no lower than 28K. And I said that the next impulse, the big one, I think Bitcoin will go over 100,000 or at least touch it. Okay. So I want to show you what all this looks like specifically on TradingView. So here we are on the TradingView Bitcoin charts. Now this is kind of the whole thing mashed up all together. So I want to show you what this looks like if we zoom in here on Bitcoin, okay? So first of all, we are looking here at the main Bitcoin chart. Obviously, we are pretty red right now. I mean, look at this. We are right bottoming out. You could say that's kind of where things are at, right? Let me go ahead and adjust this a little bit so you can see this a little clearer. There we go. So I had made a note that Bitcoin was oversold on low volume. And that's kind of why I wanted to zoom this out here. So as you can see in this chart, this is going back all the way into 2020, all right? And where it really kind of had a major impulse went way up from this area right down here, okay? So it went from, let's say, 10,000-ish all the way to ultimately peaking out at nearly 70. Let's see what we were at, 68,000 or so. So looking at this chart, you can see right now we're firmly in the red, all right? And if you zoom out and look at it in this lens, you can see that from 2021 pretty much through now, we have been trading within a channel. We have gone up a little, we've gone down, we've gone up a little, we've gone down. Currently, we are going down a little bit, right? Now, the price as of right now, even with it bottoming out, is at 32,400, okay? But when you look down here at the volume, look at how this thing is bottoming out. So it's bottoming out on really, really low volume. That's kind of telling, right? So it makes you think, all right, so who's selling right here? So Obviously, this could be people who are new to crypto. They're selling, nervous retail, etc. But there's also a seller here that we're going to be talking about in a minute who's doing a little selling right now, which is why it's low where it's at. All right. So low volume really hasn't gone anywhere near what it was all the way back to, let's say, last summer. All right. And I've talked about this a couple other times before. So that's the first thing from that tweet that I mentioned. The second thing right here is the RSI. So this is our relative strength index. So look at where we're at here. So the RSI has basically bottomed out, which tells you that we're due for a rebound from here. That's what this tells you. So we are right here, flat at the bottom, due for a rebound. We are firmly oversold. That's where we're at, right? Now, going back here to the market cipher, if you don't have market cipher B turned on, I really like the market cipher, and you can find this on TradingView. Now, if you're looking at these blue waves, you can see here. So I noted that market cipher shows we're near the bottom. So this is where we're at. It's way down here. Look, that was the last time we had a green dot and things turned around. Okay. So we are near the bottom again. So I think we are due for a turnaround here soon. Something else, if you're looking at these waves here, the red wave or the green wave, this is money inflow and outflow. So our green wave is our money inflow, our red wave is our money outflow. And, look where we're at here. So if you compare sort of as a baseline, the red wave in terms of the current outflow, it's nowhere near even what it was all the way back here, which was, late January of this year. So we're not really there in terms of outflow. So in all of this, I think what I'm getting at is that I think the current chart is due for a rebound here shortly. And like I said, if we end up dipping lower, my view was that I thought we could go to somewhere around 28,000. All right. Now let's expand on this a little bit. So if we go up here to Twitter, so here is a thread by Do Kwon. So Do Kwon is the head of Luna. And here's what happened over the last couple of days. So as Bitcoin started plummeting, remember that Luna and the Luna Foundation Guard, their council here, had made the decision. What was it? A couple weeks back, couple months, whatever it was, that they were going to start investing heavily into Bitcoin because they really want their stablecoin. This is Terra USD. They want it to be decentralized. Okay. Now, bear in mind that the stablecoin is not completely decentralized. They were just starting to do this, and the way they were going to do it was by buying a lot of Bitcoin. So at the time, it was really moving the market that they were making massive buys of Bitcoin. And I want to say they had bought, let's say $3 billion-ish, somewhere in that ballpark, with a goal of getting up to $10 billion invested into Bitcoin as part of their stablecoin reserves. Well, what's transpired over the last couple of days is as Bitcoin has fallen because of the stock market, it has caused Terra USD to lose its peg, meaning that it's then plummeting, right? So in the meantime, they kind of had to adapt to this. And this is what Do Kwon's talking about. So let me read this real quick. So he says the LFG Council, so this is the Luna Foundation Guard Council, just voted today to deploy 1.5 billion in capital. So 0.75 billion in Bitcoin, 0.75 billion in UST to allay market conditions around UST. Basically, they're trying to come up with a solution, is what he's saying. So some more context on why and how. So it mentioned there that there was a post here from the Luna Foundation Guard, but I'm not going to get into that. We're just going to go a little bit lower into Do Kwon's posts here. So in his second one, he says, first, LFG is not trying to exit its Bitcoin position because he knows it's going to be viewed as FUD, right? The goal is to have this capital in the hands of a professional market maker such that Number one, buy UST, so Terra USD, if the price is less than the peg. And number two, buy Bitcoin if the price is greater than the peg, thus significantly strengthening the liquidity around UST peg. So he says, while buys and sells of UST are not meaningfully directional now, we felt it was valuable to have capital ready to be deployed in the current market. So as markets recover, we plan to have the loan redeemed to us in Bitcoin, increasing the size of our total reserves. So basically, what he's saying is that they're having to stabilize the stablecoin because of market conditions, right? Now, he says that we had hoped that the on chain Bitcoin reserve system would be live by the time the Terra economy would contract, thereby obviating the need for LFG discretionary intervention. So, what he's saying here is that they had hoped that this had all been automated and it would automatically fix itself, but they're not there yet in terms of their development. And because of that, they had to manually intervene. So, for anybody who views anything like this, whether it be smart contracts, pretty much any time human intervention has to happen manually is usually not a good thing. At least from my experiences in corporate America, et cetera. What we want is we want things to be automated to work on autopilot because human intervention tends to muck things up a little bit, right? This is kind of why AI is so popular and can be so successful is because it goes beyond, our human quirks and issues, right? So now he says, while this did not happen, allowing BTC to be redeemed against US on an on-chain DEX, we're just a few weeks away from a testnet launch developed by Astroport FI team. That's pretty interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Now he says, until the LFG Council decided to err on the side of caution. All right. So going down further, there was a post here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is right here from Trading Places. Okay. So shout out to you. So it says to 750 million BTC will be sold at market to support the peg as needed. And he says it may if UST contracts from here. So this is kind of, the thing that a lot of people could latch onto as FUD. And this is probably why the market is tanking even further right now, because he's saying that we may have to sell some of our Bitcoin temporarily in order to shore up our stable coin. That's what he's saying. Okay. So eventually, this should not be an issue in the future once their development is completed and all of this sort of runs on autopilot on smart contract, basically. But it's not there yet. And because it's not there yet, they're having to manually intervene. So, it's a bit of a double edged sword where, a few weeks ago, months ago, whatever, when he first mentioned that they were going to be making massive buys of Bitcoin, the whole market loved it, went way up on this, and they made those huge buys. But now that the market is tanking, now he's having to adapt what they're doing in the meantime. Okay, so in the future, hopefully this does not happen. But he did mention, going back up top, where was it? I think about empirical data. It'll be an important opportunity for the Terra and wider crypto community to gather empirical data on how LFG operates and fits into the Terra ecosystem. So observe over the next few days, not on whether LFG chose to deploy reserves, but on how. Okay, that's what he's getting at here. So I don't really think this is anything fuddish or anything like that. What people got to realize is the idea of a decentralized stablecoin is something that the crypto market is really pushing for. And no one's really done this before. So there's going to be some trial and error. And I think that's what's happening right now, at least until they get it automated in a way that makes sense and it works even in a market downturn that the stablecoin holds its peg. Okay. Now, next, let's move over to blockchaincenter.net. So this is a site made by a guy named Holger. You can find him on CT. He is the main creator of this page, as far as I'm aware. But this is the Bitcoin rainbow price chart. All right. Now, what is really interesting here? So, this whole chart, if we scroll down a little bit, he mentions that it's based on this one right here. So, it says the original logarithmic regression from Bitcoin talk user Trolololo that is now used for the rainbow chart. All right. So, this was the original idea behind this. Now, what they did was he turned this into the rainbow and basically color coded the rainbow to mean different things. Okay. So if you're looking at the rainbow chart, you can see this is the entire life cycle of Bitcoin from the very beginning Genesis all the way until today. And today is, what's today, May 9th, I want to say. This is the entire life cycle. Okay. Now, there's a few different observations that you can sort of glean from looking at this. So here's some of them. So if you look back to those early impulses where it really took off, right? I mean, these two here went big time, right? It went really high. Now, this one here went outside of the rainbow. Now, if you look at, like, let's say the size of each color band, if we had two more colors here, it would probably be peaking at the top of the second color, right? Then we had a halving. So that's critical in the life cycle of Bitcoin is the halving schedule. And then we moved into the next 4 years. Well, in this cycle, we peaked at a lower peak. Okay. So we peaked at the top of the red band, right? And it's kind of funny how he notes it. That was maximum bubble territory. Okay. So in this early one, they not only peaked in it right here. So this is back in 2013. What's that? 4/17, 2013. And then it peaked again right here. So this is maximum bubble and this is beyond maximum bubble, right? Well, here it only made it to the top red area. And then if we go into the current cycle that we are in, look at this. We didn't even make it into the red at all. We made it to this orange area right here. That's about, as high as we went. So 69,402, this notes. Okay. And so what I'm getting at in all of this is that you can see here with each halving cycle, the peaks are less. Okay. So the first one, massive peak. This is where all those people got rich, essentially. These early investors. And then if they just held, it kind of keeps going up over time. But the next cycle, the peak was less. This cycle, the peak is less. The following cycle, the peak is probably going to be less than it was this cycle. That's my personal view. Okay. Now, what we can follow, though, is each cycle that went through, it ends up bottoming out somewhere in this blue territory. Back here, it even went below the blue territory, right? It dipped below it. So in this cycle, could we dip even further below the blue territory? Yeah, we probably could. So it's almost like our rainbow arc is slightly higher than it should be. Like maybe it should be a little bit lower for our rainbow arc. Maybe it's not a perfect semicircle. Maybe it's more of a semi-oval, and it's sort of the horizontal part of the oval, right? So I think that's maybe what this is telling us. And I think this is where, Plan B's various models started to run into trouble. Is I think as time moves on, it becomes harder and harder for a currency to increase in value. And I'm going to show you some more empirical data around this in a second, because blockchaincenter.net has lots of different charts here that Holger has added, which are really cool. Okay. So, early on when Bitcoin's market cap was really low, well, it's easy to double that. It's easy to double that. It's easy to double, right? But as time goes on, it becomes harder and harder and harder. And so let's say, the Bitcoin market cap is 750 billion. Well, it's a lot harder to double that. That last major impulse, as I noted, we increased by about a 5.5x. So let's say the next halving cycle, we do half of that. Let's say we do a 2 to 3x. Okay. So that would kind of put us maybe in this yellow or even the light green for the next cycle. So as time moves on, you can't keep doubling the amount of money. It just doesn't really work that way. Now, if you think about it, abstractly, and you say, well, but only 5% of the world's in crypto. So yeah, we can. Maybe. I mean, maybe you got a point there that, as more people get into it, yeah, maybe it can double. Maybe it eventually does increase back to the perfect semicircle. But at the moment, it doesn't really seem to be doing that. Okay. So we're kind of in this lower period. And I've talked about it before that I think also we have been stifled by market conditions that neither prior cycle dealt with. Okay. And that could be part of the reason why we've only hit that upper orange area. We had the COVID issue. We've got this war issue. We've got the inflation issue. These global markets, they're all tied together. And as time moves on, they just become more and more intertwined. And so when there's a disruption anywhere, it messes up all of them. All right. So that's why overall, I think it's a little bit harder for it to have the large peaks like it did early on in this cycle. The first cycle, the second cycle, the peak goes down a little bit. The third cycle, the peak goes down further. Fourth cycle, it'll probably go down even further. All right. Now, I think, as I mentioned, there's still a lot of opportunity here to accumulate. And the funny thing is, right now, look at the phase we're in. The accumulate phase. That's exactly where we are. Right now, if you're looking at this just in terms of pattern, here's another pattern. So in each of these cycles, by about the midway point, we have already peaked. Right. So this first cycle here, we definitely peaked. Let's say right about, obviously we peaked here, and then here's the midpoint, and then we kind of dropped, right? So second cycle, we peaked here. Here's the midpoint. We dropped big time, but then we rebounded a little bit. So third cycle, we definitely peaked right about here. So beginning of, let's say, 2021, we peaked. And then we've been, sort of dropping again, right? So right now we're sort of in this downward plummeting trend, but could we end up rebounding a little bit, just like we did in the prior cycle? I think we could. And this is where I was saying, I thought that, 28,000 would probably be the low. Now, what I really like about the rainbow chart is anywhere where you hover over this with your mouse, it'll give you a price. So you can kind of see what we're working with here. And over time, the rainbow, continues to go up. Okay. So let's say, right about here, that's about 28,000. So if you look at these charts and you look at it historically, could we hit 28,000 there? Absolutely. Let's say we go further into the blue as time goes down. That's about 23,000. But as you continue to move up, look, it continues to gain. Our baseline goes up as time goes on. Okay. So that's the critical thing here, is that our baseline will continue to go up. So as I mentioned in my post, I thought we would bottom at 28. That's based on what I was looking at TradingView. If you're looking at the rainbow chart, though, and you say, look, every single cycle, the second half, we went firmly into the blue area. Well, that's true. All right. So if we go firmly into the blue, then let's say we go all the way down to 23, maybe 22. So you're sort of looking at a window here between about anywhere from, let's say, 22.5 to 28,000 could be the ultimate bottom here for Bitcoin. Now, could we have that little pump up where we go up a little bit? And look at this, we could hit 68 and be in the green. We're not even in the yellow. We could hit 70, 75, 78, 80, and then we could go down, just like we did in this prior cycle right here. So that's kind of where I think this thing falls, is I think it probably, my personal view was somewhere around 28. But if you're looking at the rainbow chart, it could theoretically go down to 23. Okay. So from where we're at now, that's still a pretty good drop. It could absolutely happen, especially as the stock market just doesn't have its footing. But what you got to realize is, looking at this on a macro view, that this low area in the dark blue here, that says basically a fire sale, right? And buy and accumulate, and still cheap. So anywhere up through any of the blue or green, you really want to be buying and accumulating. And by that, I mean your DCA. This is where the DCA really comes in. And so this is just a fantastic chart overall. And I know Holger, he's taken some heat on this thing in the past where, somebody said something along the lines of like, hey, moron, how can you do a Bitcoin chart based on colors or something? And you could tell he found it hilarious, right? But I think he was dead on with this. I think it's actually a really good chart. The only thing, is over time is the rate at which the rainbow is going up. Does it need to flatten out a little more? And potentially, yes. Or is this just sort of an oddball cycle because of COVID and all those market factors? And next cycle, let's say we don't have that. So does it go harder next cycle? That's kind of to be determined. We really don't know yet. All right. Now, as I had mentioned, if you scroll down here on blockchaincenter.net, he's got all of these really neat tools and just little features that he's added all over the place here. So there's lots of really cool stuff like this one, like altcoin season index. People are always talking about altcoin season. Are we in altcoin season? Are we not in altcoin season? What does this really look like? Um, the story around altcoin season is essentially that Bitcoin always pumps first, and eventually, because Bitcoin is safe money, so that's where all the money goes to, right? It goes into Bitcoin. That's your safe money, and eventually, as Bitcoin peaks out, then the money goes out of Bitcoin, goes into the altcoins. Altcoins pump. So where are we at in terms of an altcoin season? Well, according to this chart, look. So anything with an altcoin season is over 75 here on this chart, and anything below is 25 is Bitcoin season. Well, we're at 29 right now. So we're like 4 points away from Bitcoin season. In terms of altcoin season, where did that occur? Well, pretty much according to this, it looks like it occurred, springtime of 2021. All right. So we're definitely nowhere near an altcoin season. We're a lot closer to a Bitcoin season. Now, something else I want to show you here is if we go back to his tools, there's one down here called dollar cost averaging tool. So I think this is really eye-opening, and I don't think probably the vast majority of people in crypto fully understand the way this dollar cost averaging tool, how this works just in general, right? And so what's interesting here is what this chart proves to you is it proves that you make the money in crypto when you get in early. That's kind of what this proves. Now, he doesn't have all of the coins and cryptocurrency in here. There's only, a handful of them. But what it shows you is that all those gains, the big gains, are made early on. And each year thereafter, the gains go down. That's kind of naturally what happens. Now, what's interesting about the chart is if you look at 2021 and 2022, we're like completely red. So everything has trended from big gains in all these more established coins all the way down to losing money. Okay. And it really kind of makes you wonder, Bitcoin historically has returned over 200% average per year. But if you look at this, you can see that does appear, by all accounts, to be going down as time moves on. Now, if we have some years where this trend reverses, then that completely throws some of this out the window. But for now, what you can see here pretty clearly is that as time moves on, the returns become less and less and less and less. And so, for a lot of people that got in recently, 2021, 2020, and you're buying the main staple coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., you're just losing money for the most part on average is what this looks like. So I think really where you have the best opportunity is in, some of those really good altcoin projects. Obviously I talk about Jasmy a lot on this project or on this channel. There's a lot of opportunity there. Now, we'll see what happens with Bitcoin moving forward and how these returns change. Now, should we have some green years? Yeah, we should. That's kind of why everybody's in this to begin with. But I think what this really captures is sort of how we all have felt. It's like you just kind of keep putting money into this and it just keeps dropping. And what is going on here? What is causing this? And I think a lot of it, again, just goes back to the repercussions of COVID, supply chain disruptions, inflation, Russia invading Ukraine. The list kind of goes on and on. Ships stuck in the ports, they can't get the goods out. The U.S. just willy-nilly printing money left and right. All of that stuff just really kind of just adds up to this cumulative negative couple of years here is what's been going on. But that doesn't mean there isn't lots and lots of opportunity out there, because there absolutely is. So going all the way back now to my original post that kind of kicked this all off, and going back to that original listener on our phone call yesterday, this is where I'm currently standing, is I think roughly 28. I think our next impulse takes us up to 100, and then we'll probably go down from there and bottom out and the cycle's over. Could we end up dropping below 28 to 22.5 at the absolute lowest, somewhere around there, 22? It's possible. It's not outside the realm of possibility. And, that's what you're looking at in terms of this is, probabilities, right? What are the odds that that will actually happen? Well, it could. It's possible. It could. It's also very possible things could turn around here. So I think that's kind of where we're at in terms of the market as a whole. And I'll be wrapping up this video here in a second and bring this one on home. All right, so for some final thoughts today. First of all, where we're at is at the bottom. We are firmly oversold and we're due for a rebound. So I think that is coming in shortly on Bitcoin, and we should have a bit of a rebound from where we've been at, right? Secondly, going back to my tweet that I put out there, where I think this bottom could be, potentially somewhere around 28,000 based off TradingView. That looks like a realistic point. If we ended up dropping through that lower support level, then it could go all the way down to something maybe around 23,000, 22.5, and that would sort of line up with the rainbow chart. Now, if it dropped below the rainbow chart, as it did in the prior cycle, maybe 20 even, maybe 20, okay? So what all of this means is that in terms of strategy and what you can do now, are we going to be going down at some point in this cycle? Yeah, we probably are, okay? So if you look at the prior cycles, the first half of each cycle was where the strong impulses were, and then after that it kind of died out. Now, last cycle is a little bit different because it did rebound a little bit in that second half. Could this cycle also rebound in the second half? I think it could, okay? Now, after that rebound, does it drop further? Yeah, of course. It has to drop down, and then the next halving occurs, okay? So in terms of a bottom for Bitcoin, it's kind of a range. It really is. It's somewhere between about 22.5 and 28. If it fell below 22.5, would it ever go under 20? I'm not really convinced of that. I don't really think so. All right. Now, I do think if you look at the projections over time, it seems like that's kind of where all the projections have fallen apart with this. And maybe it's market factors. Maybe it isn't market factors. Maybe we just had a higher projection than what was going to actually happen. As I talked about earlier in the video, those peaks have gotten less and less each cycle, right? With those, the market cap has gotten larger and larger, which makes it harder and harder to increase at the same rate. So over time it does flatten out, but maybe it's flattening a little faster than what we thought. All right. Now, would some fundamental changes to the crypto market make a difference here? Probably. I've thought about this before, that with all the Bitcoin pairs out there, that's why Bitcoin it drives the market straight up, and then it kills it at the same time. In some of those Bitcoin pairs. In terms of the opportunity, though, I was thinking about this too. As Bitcoin goes down to 20,000, who's going to be the first person buying is probably going to be Michael Saylor. At some point, he's going to be living in a smart car down by the river. living in the car itself, and that'll be all he's got, and everything else will be in Bitcoin because the prices are just so good. And at the end of the day, he's going to win because that's what he does, right? But, you know, in terms of the market for today, and in terms of where we could go from here, could we have a few more red days? Yeah, we absolutely could until that issue with Terra USD works itself out. So I think that's another sort of FUD thing that's weighing on this, that figures into kind of the market as a whole, all right? So hopefully, you know, what I communicated in this video makes sense. You know, I showed you that DCA chart where over time, all those big time investments have gone down over time. That's true. Now, is this just 2 oddball years? It's possible, to be determined, but it has been going down that whole time, which kind of says to me that really if you want to make money in cryptocurrency, you got to get into projects early. You got to get into projects that have a lot of potential because they have a low market cap. You know, solid teams, right? You got to be looking at these kinds of things. And if you do, you can do just fine in cryptocurrency. You can also do just fine with something like Bitcoin because we've proven in the rainbow chart that over time, that baseline goes up regardless. So if you wanted to, you know, that's probably your safest thing you could ever get into is Bitcoin. But just know if you do, you're really not going to make any, you know, big returns on it because obviously it's proof of work. There's no staking, all that stuff. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Hopefully that makes sense. In the time we have till the end of this cycle, will we eventually drop down in that 20,000, 25,000-ish, give or take range? We probably will. That probably will happen. But where that doesn't affect you is if you just do a steady DCA, because over time our baseline will increase. All right? So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button. Don't forget that I'm also on Twitter at KIR Finance, where you can find me tweeting and retweeting, so check me out there. And lastly, for a friendly reminder, this is Jesse with Keeping It Real Finance, channel that always has your back, tells it like it is, and I will see you on the next one. Later.